This work looks at the outcomes of a business school's discipline-based knowledge assessment exercise. Let me give you a little background. We have an 80-question assessment of 10 areas of business. So each area gets 8 questions. And in the last course that the students have to take, the last compulsory course called the capstone course, we have them do this assessment. What have you learned in the past 4 years in these 10 areas? Because we have them do the assessment online, we can see their score and we can see how long they spent on the assessment. The course used to be taught on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which was 110 minutes. We went from 4 credits to 3 credits. That pushed it down to 75 minutes. So we grappled with the idea, do we take some of the questions out because we've gone from 100 minutes to 75 minutes? We decided to leave it. The university was willing to tell us for each student their history at the university, how many classes they took at the university, how many classes were face-to-face or hybrid instructional mode. And it would tell us records about whether the students started at the university or whether they transferred in. So we have this data called FIDIAC, first time in any college, or transfer. For the students who took the assessment that semester, 43% of their classes at the institution were face-to-face, 31% were online, 19% were hybrid. 2/3 of them were originally the school they started college in, and 36% were transfers. The average number of face-to-face classes they took was 6.5, and the average number of classes they took at the institution was 13.6. The score is 0 to 100, and the mean score is 67.5. The mean length of time logged on is 44 minutes. So another half an hour they have, they could be taking the test and they're gone. So what I call model number 1 looks at the length of time and correlates it with their score. Model number 1 basically says that the coefficient on the time variable was 0.5. For every 2 minutes longer they spent, their score increased by 1 percentage point. Model number 2, I wanted to find out if face-to-face matters, on the idea that face-to-face instruction is better than online instruction, or so I thought. And that negative coefficient bugged me like anything. Why is it that if you take more face-to-face classes, your score is lower? So then we also had data on the number of courses they took at the school. And the question was, how do I include that in specification? I could include it linearly. I chose to include it quadratic at first. But quadratic has the idea that it can turn down. So then I tried a logarithmic function. And that's what I have in this model, number 3. So we see that the more courses they took, the higher their score went. The more courses they took at the institution. That's where you build the knowledge, obviously. So that's a duh, of course. In order to get to the end, you have to take the classes and get to the end. Then model number 4, I decided to ask the question, controlling for time spent on the test. Did it matter if you were a transfer student or if you started at the university? It was not statistically significant, but it basically said that the transfer students, if you could interpret the number, would be a half a step behind the FIDIACs. But it's not significant, so we can't make any conclusion there. Model number 5 is the story I want to tell today. Model number 6 brings back in the transfer, which I said was not significant, and it remained not significant. So I'm going to walk back to model number 5 and end the story there. So I have 3 right-hand side variables, 2 of which are related, and then the time spent on the test. The face-to-face is a fraction of all the classes you took. So then I'll be controlling. I'm saying, given that you are taking these courses, did face-to-face impact how you did on the test? And I got the same result I got in model number 2. That increased number of face-to-face classes worsened your score on the assessment. Ponder whether or not face-to-face should be a penalty when it comes to this assessment. It should be an asset. I picked up something yesterday when I was at work. It says, everything I say will be on the exam. And my students would say, your exams don't follow the textbook. So I think you understand what the results are. Model number 1, length of time taken was positively correlated with the assessment score. Each additional 2 minutes raised the score by 1 percentage point. 20 minutes would raise your score by 10 percentage points. So let's play with the idea that if the students are done in 44 minutes, spending 30 seconds per question, and there's another 30 minutes they could stay and improve their score, why not do that? Something to ponder. Model number 2 included a face-to-face, which is my first shot. The number of face-to-face courses is negatively correlated with your assessment score. The double star says 95% level of confidence. That's not zero. But the coefficient, I always tell my students, look at the significance first, but interpret the actual coefficient. Otherwise, you're just being a statistician. An economist must ask, what does it mean? So what does it mean? For every one additional course you take face-to-face, your score goes down by 1%. If you took the same time as someone who did not have that face-to-face, you're 1% behind them. Here's a spin on that. I tell my students, do not submit their tests early. Hold on to your tests. Look over the questions. Trust but verify. Trust you did it right, but verify you did it right. I've had students over the many years who would come up to me to turn in their test and I would say, please sit down for another 10 minutes. Look it over. And usually they would find something that was wrong and they would fix it and they say, thank you. They thought they were done, but I refused to take the test from them. If the student logs on and stays longer because their face-to-face training told them not to submit their test early, that could explain it. They're checking over. It didn't improve their score, but the extra time goes all. You have the same score for two students. One spent longer on the test to get the same score, but it's not a bad thing. It shocks us that it's negative, but potentially it's not a bad thing. And then when you see the penalty is for every additional course is 1 percentage point lower, 1 percentage point is nothing. So you got a 66. The other student who had more face-to-face class got a 65. It's the same score practically. On an assessment where all we want you to do is to meet the expectation, then you've met the expectation. So it's not a big penalty. Obviously, this is spin on my part. I'm not saying to accept it. And I also wanted to note the fact that before the pandemic, we didn't have much online. The pandemic changed things. So we got a lot of online instruction. Even for those who wanted face-to-face, they were forced online. And this is the last thing I would say. That students who are committed to online have figured out how to make online work for them. Students who want face-to-face are not comfortable in that environment and they say, let me come face-to-face. And it could be a penalty because face-to-face has a high cost. You got to dress to come to class, you got to pay attention in class, you got to listen to the instructor, etc. So it's a high cost. And the tests, not usually test bank questions, but online courses are more likely to use textbook prepared test bank questions. And if you're trained in how to do that, you'll be good at it. And now I'll entertain some questions. Thank you.